I don't know what to say here today. So, intro. I would be remiss in the duties of Current Event Wednesdays if I did not discuss the same thing that everybody is discussing this week, Barack Obama's first 100 days. This idea of critiquing a president's first 100 days in office is actually a fairly recent one. It dates back, as some of you might know, to President Franklin Delano Roosevelt and his first 100 days. And no president yet has reached the productivity of Roosevelt's first 100 days. Everything he brought to Congress, they passed, almost unquestioningly. And the common consensus seems to be that while Barack Obama's first 100 days were not as productive as FDR's first 100 days, they were about as bold as any presidents have been. He did not get as many things passed through Congress because he didn't have the support that FDR did. So why is that? Both Roosevelt and Obama became presidents during economic crises. Why isn't Obama getting as much support as Roosevelt did? Well, several reasons. First of all, bad as it may be, this economic crisis is nowhere near as bad as the Great Depression was. Second, by the time Roosevelt became president, the economic crisis had been going on for about 3 or 4 years. The nation became severely disillusioned with his policies and with the Republican Party, and they turned to Roosevelt. Because he, unlike Hoover, was actually trying to do something about the economy. It didn't hurt that the Democrats also had a pretty high majority in both houses. And it's also important to realize that even though he got unprecedented support in his first 100 days, that support did not last for more than a few years. By the end of his first term, Congress was already whittling away at those programs that they had approved earlier. But I think the thing that really changed things between then and now is the 50s. There were unprecedented anti-communist feelings during that time that continued to have effects on politics of today. And FDR's administration did have the Red Scare to deal with, but that was nothing compared to McCarthyism. And a major criticism of both Roosevelt's policies and Obama's policies is that they're too socialist, that they limit the freedom of capitalism. Additionally, the 50s saw the first televised presidential campaign. Roosevelt's campaign for president actually was pretty vague. He talked about a New Deal and he talked about a way to get the United States out of the Great Depression, but he didn't really go into a lot of details about how he was going to accomplish this. And in today's era of instant news, you can't possibly get away with that. Today, we can see almost every minute of a presidential campaign, and so candidates can't be vague anymore. And Obama spelled out a lot of plans that a lot of people had a problem with. And so they made their decisions on his plans long before a vote was ever called in Congress. But one of the big things I think that has changed between the 30s and now is that we are not a nation that likes to make sacrifices anymore. Both the Great Depression and our current economic crisis came out of times that were really rather prosperous. But in today's world, we have existed with that prosperity for a lot longer. The 50s, with the invention of television, with the development of suburbia, with more and more Americans buying cars and buying household appliances, it became part of the American way of life to be able to get what you want. In the early 30s, it was still a relatively new idea, and it was easy for Americans to go back to that idea of sacrificing certain things that they didn't necessarily need. And so it's a lot harder for us today to make sacrifices that might help the economy. And really, we have existed in that state since the 50s. And so now I'd like to ask you, how do you think that Obama has fared in his first 100 days in office? And speaking of benchmarks, this is episode 90, which means that we are fast approaching the first 100 episodes of Vlog Driver. And so I'll see you next time with episode 91. Bye-bye.